I like. Do you like? We enjoyed a lot. These are three statements or questions that you might be familiar with. Can you tell me why they're wrong? At least grammatically. Hopefully, by the end of this presentation, you will be able to explain why verbs such as like and enjoy cannot be used in this way. Okay, so the short explanation that one could give for why those sentences were wrong is that it has to do with transitive and intransitive verbs. Some verbs are both transitive and intransitive. At this point, you might be asking yourself, what's a transitive verb? What's an intransitive verb? Go ahead and take a minute, pause the video if you need to see if you can write down any transitive verbs, any intransitive verbs, and also any verbs that could be used transitively or intransitively. Let's get started with transitive verbs. It's important to note that tran or trans means across, beyond, or through. This will be important especially for meaning and understanding the difference between transitive and intransitive verbs. A very common pattern in grammar in English is the pattern of subject, verb, object. Now, go ahead and try this example. Austin ate a sandwich. Can you identify the subject, the verb, and the object? Okay, so I'm guessing that you said Austin was the subject, ate was the verb, and a sandwich was the object. It might help you to think of it with a visual. Think of your verb as a door, and on one side you've got to have a subject or a noun type thing, and on the other side of the door you need to have the object, which is a noun or a verb or something that's being referred to. So really the divider is the door, which is the verb. Transitive verbs, they go through the door, they go across the door, beyond the door, but there needs to be something on both sides. Now let's take a look at two new verbs, lend and borrow, two very common verbs. Can you think of ways that you might use the verbs lend and borrow? Think of some specific examples of sentences. Alright, so now after thinking of a sentence using lend or borrow, what would you say? Would you say it's a transitive verb? Here's a good example. My friend lent me $5. Can you find the subject? Good. Can you find the verb? And the object? Yeah, in this example, there are actually two. So we have what's referred to as the direct object, $5, and we have the indirect object, which would be me. Therefore, lend is a transitive verb. What about borrow? I borrowed $5 from my friend. This sentence has the same meaning, we just changed the words around. Let's go backwards this time. Let's say that you want to identify the object first. What would you say is the object? Okay, good. $5. Again, the my friend here in this case would just be the indirect object. What's your subject? Good. And so finally your verb would be borrowed. Again, that's linking. It's your doorway. It's linking both the subject and the object. Let's revisit the diagram. Transitive verbs follow the pattern subject, verb, object. What do you think the pattern is for intransitive verbs? Yeah, just subject, verb, no object. Although you might also have a prepositional phrase, an adverbial, or something to follow. So subject, verb, preposition, subject, verb, prepositional phrase, something along those lines, but certainly not subject, verb, object. So intransitive verbs don't take an object. The verb sleep is a great example. You could say, I sleep, and you could add adverbial phrases or adverbs, prepositional phrases. For example, I sleep well. I sleep for 8 hours every night. This would be a good prepositional phrase. You could also be descriptive about where you sleep. For example, I sleep in a bed. So you couldn't say something like, I sleep night. But this is easily fixable. How could you fix this? Yeah, you just need to add a word. Which word would you add? Some sort of a preposition, I sleep at night, for example. Another misuse of the word sleep would be if you said, for example, the mother slept her baby. This would be incorrect as well. And again, how could you change this or make it more grammatical? Here it's the meaning. You would have to say the mother slept, period, or you could say the mother put her baby to sleep. But you'd need to change this for meaning, because you can't have, as an intransitive verb, you cannot have your verb and your object here. Cry, laugh, rise, and fall are 4 good examples of intransitive verbs. For example, you could say, she cried. You could add a description, she cried a little. You could say, she laughed. Could you say, she laughed the joke? You couldn't do that here because she is our subject, laughed is our verb, and the joke is our object. So how could you fix this? You'd have to add a preposition. She laughed at the joke. For the verb rise, we could say the sun rose at 6:12. And for the verb fall, we could say the hiker fell. Could you say the hiker fell the mountain? Hopefully you said no. What's missing? A preposition. So to make this a prepositional phrase, we could say the hiker fell down the mountain. We've talked about transitive verbs, we've talked about intransitive verbs, and here are 3 good examples of verbs that can do both. These can be used either transitively or intransitively. Grow, improve, and develop. Okay, let's see if you can see the difference. Go ahead and take the verb grow and use it with this picture. How would you describe this picture? Okay, I chose the sentence, these farmers grow potatoes. Is this sentence transitive or intransitive? You're right, it's transitive because we have a subject and we also have an object, potatoes. Hopefully the sentence that you said was similar to this, and you didn't choose something like, these farmers grow or the farmers grow, because if you didn't have an object, it would mean the farmers were getting bigger, and you don't want to do that. Improve is a really good verb because everybody wants to use the verb improve. So think about your grammar, for example. How could you use improve and talk about your grammar? Okay, I chose my grammar has improved. You might also say my grammar hasn't improved, but either one would be fine. It's also possible that you might have said, I have improved my grammar. So what's the difference really with these 2 sentences? Which one is transitive, which one is intransitive? I'm guessing that you said the first one here is intransitive and this one was transitive. In the first example, we don't know why your grammar has improved. In the second example, the subject, verb, and object, we know specifically that you are the reason, or you improved your grammar. Develop is the 3rd verb that follows this pattern that can be either transitive or intransitive. Can you think about how you could use the verb develop when talking about your country? Can you think of any specific examples of sentences? Okay, so you might have said, my country has developed, And in this case, has developed is the verb linking to clearly my country. But you might have been more specific and said, my country has developed its transportation system. And in this case, we've got its transportation system, we've got my country. Going back to what we talked about earlier with a door, you've got two nouns here, and you've got that verb in the middle. So this is linking both ideas. In this case also, has developed is not linked to my country. Has developed is linked to its transportation system. So both are involved here. And really it changes the meaning. Two different meanings, a transitive meaning and an intransitive meaning. The second one is clearly a little bit more specific. Now let's revisit those three examples from the beginning of the presentation. We said they were wrong, and I also said that by the end of the presentation you should be able to explain why. So what's wrong with these? Why are they wrong? What kind of verbs are like and enjoy? Like and enjoy are clearly transitive verbs, and at this point you should be fairly clear on what transitive verbs are and what intransitive verbs are, and which ones can be used both ways, either transitively or intransitively.